D.P.W committee meeting. My name is Councilor Green. I'm joined by Councilor Rudd, and it looks like Councilor Driscoll. So let's start right with item 1. Ken?
Good afternoon, councilors. What I have for your approval is an agreement with New York State Department of Transportation. It's a municipal agreement with the state DOT. The state will be replacing street lighting between Peach Street and the eastbound ramp of Thompson Road, including the on-ramps and off-ramps. Because it's in the city of Syracuse, there's an agreement that needs to be in place with the state and the municipality. The state will do all installation of pull boxes, conductors, and any conduit systems that need to be addressed. Once it's completed, the city, based on highway law, will be required to maintain, repair, replace anything going forward.
So talk to me a little bit about how that works, where it's a state highway, but municipalities pay to maintain it?
It's our responsibility. It's the municipality's responsibility to maintain and repair after the state has replaced or put in new lighting. Very similar to the expansion of 690 between Teal and Midler. They added all those lights. Once they were added, it became the city's responsibility to address them, and that's under the New York State highway law.
So, but how does it work? I mean, because obviously on 690, there's areas, other municipalities that don't have lights, right? So is it technically we could decide not to let them install it and then we wouldn't maintain it? How does that work?
So the way I'm covering just the part that's within the city limits, Counselor. Mm-hmm. This project is going well beyond Thompson Road. Other towns that are affected are Town of DeWitt and the village of East Syracuse as well. So they're going to have municipal agreements as well with the state going forward.
So do we have an estimate of what the cost would be to maintain it?
I do not, Counselor. I think it's going to be based upon, I don't have a cost, and I wouldn't know how to go about doing that right now. Something that I have brought up with the administration, especially Corey Driscoll Dunham. We're going to want to get our county involved if we need to do anything with those lights going forward, because you're talking lane closures, and we don't have the equipment to deal with that right now. Once we have either our RFP for street lighting, for the maintenance of street lighting, which will be presented to you guys probably in the next 2 to 3 months, or the county has that equipment to close a lane and have our electricians address a light if need be. And that's mainly going to be if it doesn't work, say a lamp goes out, or if a car does hit it and takes down one of the poles.
And so what's the time on it? I mean, my main issue, just looking at what was submitted, just like a 1-sentence thing. I just don't know if I have a good understanding of what we're agreeing to, what the costs are and all that. I mean, is this something that's happening right away, or what's the timing of it?
Time frame, give me 1 second. It looks like the award will be let out by the state October 25th of 2020. So sometime after end of October is when this will start to commence.
Okay. The state needs it back by the time they start letting, which is September 10th. Correct. They need these agreements in place by the time they start the letting.
Councilor Rudd or Driscoll, any questions on this?
Do we have any, I guess my thoughts would just be, when we first discussed this, maybe I guess this is coming in the pipeline. So, we, as Commissioner Towsley there said, it'll be before us in a few months, but I guess just initially to tap it, concerns about, do we need to retrain some of our electric guys to deal with these lights? Are they different in capacity for training with that, and do we have concerns about capacity moving forward about dealing with them? It seems like it'd be a big addition to our workload, but perhaps I have that wrong. Just what those conversations are like at the moment.
So, Councilor Driscoll, are we asking about the street lighting as a whole, or dealing with the sole on interstates between 81 and 690?
I was more discussing as a whole, but I don't know if this is the right time to have that conversation. That's down the pipeline, but I'm from the time we've initiated these conversations, that's kind of been where my mind has gone about where what our capacity would be, what our training needs would be. But as you mentioned, that'll be before us in a month or two. But I would be interested off the top, what those thoughts would be at this time.
No, good question. I believe, two ways to look at this. One, we're definitely going to want to have that RFP for a maintenance contractor, especially to deal with emergencies, where within that RFP, it's going to be 24 hours of notification. Our electricians that work for the city, there will be no additional training needed for them. They are more than qualified to perform the work that they currently do now. Ideally, to save as much money as we can, especially in this environment, I will utilize the city electricians more so than I would a maintenance contractor, especially depending on the workload. So no additional training will be needed. The lamps themselves have just changed out to LEDs. The big training, it'll be on my end, is the nodes and the communication side of things. And then once I'm up to speed on that, then it'll be a determination on what, if any, additional training for the electricians would be needed.
Councilor Green, can I ask a question here?
Sure, go ahead.
Ken, historically, the city has paid for the electricity of the lights on 690 and 81 that run through the city in that agreement. And I think what Councilor Green was getting at is what additional costs besides the infrastructure being transferred over would we incur if we start lighting through Thompson Road, which goes into DeWitt but ends up part of the city. So we're adding to the light coverage of 690 and 81, or at least 690. And what is our current agreement with the state on that cost, and how much would this increase the cost?
That is information I'll have to get to you, Mr. Kapanis.
I think it's just also worth noting that this conversation also spurned in part from the accident that Jim Boeheim was in, and we requested the state to increase the amount of lighting along this corridor. And as Ken alluded to, it's New York State's policy that the municipality then becomes responsible for it. So that's a conversation, that's an obligation that we already face. I mean, this is obviously separate from the clerk's question, but that's already an obligation that we face, as the clerk referenced to. And yeah, well, Ken, you and I will have to work on if we can get a cost estimate for what we think this maintenance will become. But this is how the state operates lighting on the interstates, for what that's worth.
I just want to also point out that the city in the past has asked the state of New York for special legislation to exempt cities of 100,000 or more from having to pay this cost, because it's obviously necessary to have streetlights in the city proper area of 81 and 690, but localities shouldn't have to pay for it. For example, Solvay does not pay for the lighting when the state fair is not on because they don't want to incur that cost. So I think we should revisit having the state of New York cover these costs rather than the local municipalities.
I think we're in complete agreement there. I mean, we're not equipped to be working on highways, and I agree. I don't think this should be a cost that we bear. That's currently New York State's policy, but it's something that I'd like to, and Ken and I have talked about revisiting, because it just doesn't seem like it's the most logical way to approach this. So complete agreement there.
If I could just tap in, perhaps Mr. Kapanis or others, what would be the route? I mean, would a resolution be in order, or what kind of advocacy would that be? The administration or the council to try to work on that issue about the state's policy?
In the past, it's been on the list of things that the city has gone to the state for relief on, for unfunded, mandates. I guess if the council wanted to pass a resolution requesting the state legislature enact legislation, that could be done.
Yeah, I think we'd probably start with a conversation with our delegation and start from there. It's obviously great to know that the council could be supportive and may be willing to pass a resolution. I think we'll probably start a conversation with the state delegation and take it from there.
Great. Yeah, I just wanted to get clarity on who's, who would want to take that effort forward.
Sure.
This is unrelated to streetlights, but it sounds maybe it's similar. I can't hear Peach Street and not have this thought, and I've asked about it before because South Beach Street got redone and it's beautiful and it has sidewalks and it's lit underneath and it like you would walk under it without thinking twice. Whereas Peach Street, a street that a lot of people do walk across, is like an industrial wasteland by appearance. So is there any kind of program similar where the state might pay for like sidewalk upgrades if we promise to maintain them under a 690 or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, we could certainly approach them on it, and usually whether we offer to or not, we end up being responsible for maintaining the sidewalk. So, I mean, but I agree, Peach Street gets a good amount of traffic and it could look a lot better and be a lot safer than it is right now. So be willing to include that.
As I understand it, South Beach, they're not about to redo Peach Street anytime soon. It's not in the way South Beach got redone, it's not going to get done. So it seems like we need an alternate plan for pedestrian safety there.
Sure.
Councilor Green, this is Nader. Can I ask a question, please? Thank you. Ken, we currently have the responsibility for the lighting on 690. Historically, many of the lights are out, both on the eastbound lane and the westbound lane. At any given time, you might see 13 to 25 of them out. The city's position has been in the past not to do anything with those, putting it bluntly. And it may be because, as Corey and Ken have identified, that we don't have the equipment to do it, but I think it was more a choice of not doing it. So as we enter into a municipal agreement with the state, does the city pose a position to have any liability from the state coming back to us because we're not maintaining and we have not maintained them? And there's documentation to that historically. That's part A. Part B is because we haven't done that, and if there were an accident, unfortunately, like the Coach Bayheim one, but if there was an accident in the area of the city responsibility, would we be liable? There's two parts to that question.
The second part I would leave to the law department. I'm not going to pretend to answer that one and know the answer to that one. The first one in regards to what's happened in the past, I can say that our contractor, D&M, NIPA's contractor, D&M Electric, has changed over all the lights on 81. There might be a few left that they're changing over to the new LEDs. The ones on 690, they're being put on hold because of this project here. Until we get this through and then NIPA deals with Department of Transportation, we'll determine how we're going to change over the ones on 690 as well. So my guess would be going forward is, I don't want to make a stance that we're not going to maintain them, Nader, but the fact that they are being changed over to the new LEDs with the communication nodes on them, we should be responsible for those going forward. And I go back to what I said earlier, this is something that we're going to want to have an open conversation with the county about for help on this going forward.
Yeah, I think to Ken's point, it needs to be a comprehensive, because we have agreements for other patches of the interstate that it seems like a patchwork where some of the agreements have expired, some of them are kind of vague. And so I think we really need to have a comprehensive conversation, bringing in our state delegation, talking to the county to see if we can have less from, Pete to Thompson or Midler to, these kind of little sections of interstate and have just kind of an overall more comprehensive approach to it.
Part and parcel of the discussion in the past was also trying to get the state to clean the off and on ramps. And that entered into discussions relative to, well, what are you doing, meaning you being the city. So I just trying to give that historical perspective so that you have that as you're putting together the municipal agreement and understanding what the city's liabilities or responsibilities are and how we negotiate that, for whatever it's worth.
All right, thanks, Tanner. All right, so we do have to get through the other items. So I think my position on this is I'll make a motion to move it, and then, but we may end up holding it if we don't get the information we need before the actual voting session. Councilor Rudd, are you okay doing that?
That's fine.
Okay. All right, so we'll move item 1. Move into item 2. Commissioner Robinson or Lori?
It's Ann. I'm here.
Okay,
How you doing?
good. How are you?
Good. We're hanging in there. So this one was for safety shoes, and it looks like it was just, they had the wrong amounts of boots, and it was also the wrong budget account to be used for the Syracuse Police Department. So the total amount was estimated or not to exceed $87,850, and will be put into the appropriate account.
Okay, I'm fine moving this one, Councilor Rudd.
That's fine.
Okay. All right, item 3.
And that is the environmental hearing contract, and we are withdrawing that at this time.
Items 4, 5, and 6 are all the fuel agreements. You want to just walk us through those?
Yeah, so those are agreements with Honda County, the school district, and Syracuse Housing for fuel, just so they can fuel up here. They do pay us like an administrative fee for the use of the pumps.
Fine. Does the increase, the markup ever change, or has that been constant for a long time?
The administrative fee?
Yeah.
I am not sure on that one. Lori, are you on? I see her name, but she was having some computer difficulties, so.
I'm fine with it. I would just say if you can find out whether it's ever changed or if it's a function of the like a percentage or fixed dollar amount, that would just.
No problem.
Okay, and then similarly, walk us through 7 and 9.
Yes, so for SALT, it's Centro, Syracuse Housing, and SUNY Upstate, and they have a administrative type fee on there as well. The good news on that is that SALT went down, so that was the good takeaway from it. And let me see, there's just a $5 per ton administrative fee on that.
Councilor Rudd, are you good with these 3?
Or a similar question on that one, Councilor Rudd?
I mean, same question, but it would
No, it's a good question to see if it's reflective of our inputs as well.
right. And I would assume there's a benefit to buying because we probably get a lower price buying more in bulk.
Yeah.
So.
It, I believe this one is on this one was county contract, and sometimes you'll find that the state contract might be cheaper or this versus this county, but this time it looks like the county price dropped substantially, which we are grateful for. So.
Councilor Driscoll, do you have anything on these? I don't want to miss you here, but.
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, item 10.
I think this is the City Hall Security Improvements Project. So I contacted Councilor Green earlier today. Wow. Lori, I think that was you.
That was me.
I like to hear myself talk, but
I was
not
on the
echoing
phone and
that.
just got connected.
That's okay. That's all right. If you don't mind muting, and that way, hopefully, we can reduce the echo. Thank you, Lori. So I had mentioned this previously in council leadership a few times. So in our capital budget, we had put aside $500,000 for the City Hall space assessment study and also for City Hall security improvements. whether it's the employee feedback that we receive in workplace violence prevention training, if it's concerns that we've fielded from the council office as well, or if you visit a number of other municipal city halls in the region, they have more security protocols in place than we currently do at City Hall. So the COVID pandemic sort of accelerated the timeline of when we were going to do this. But as many of you may have seen, we've installed a ramp on the Market Street side of City Hall. So the intent there is to create a single point of entry right there for City Hall. And then the goal would be to have, as the letter indicates, in light of COVID, having a standing thermometer to take everybody's temperature quickly as they come into City Hall, both employees and the public. It's a similar system that the police and fire have right now at the PSB. We've also been looking to have walk-through metal detectors, relocating the security staff that's currently on the second floor of City Hall down to the first floor. And then our goal would be to install card access panels for the offices in City Hall so that, we could program it so that staff would have access to their offices, but it would provide a little bit more control in terms of traffic traveling through City Hall. So, as I mentioned, the security program, the security project had been in the works for a while, but I think it's now sort of rolled in with COVID and has accelerated the timeline. So, so if anybody has any questions on that, I know there's a lot there, but.
Can you talk a little bit about, so security in the council chambers, is there anything new there?
So I think it would mainly be that if everyone entering City Hall would enter through a metal detector, then that would provide an additional security for everyone in the building. So, whether it's obviously council meetings are usually the events that draw the most public on a regular basis to City Hall. So, but it really would apply universally to making it safer for the public, for the employees. So there's nothing specific to the chamber, but by creating that single point of entry, we can make sure that everyone, as they walk into the building, has gone through the metal detector and had their temperature taken.
Okay. Any other questions on this? Okay. Councilor, are you okay with it?
Fine.
All right. Item.
You just have a breakdown of, the cost is $500,000. You described a couple things. Is there I didn't look at the.
Yes. Yeah, I can. Yes. I can give you a breakdown of what we estimate the different components to cost. And then, the space assessment study, trying to use better use of our space will come a little bit further down the road. But obviously this needs to be done more quickly, but I can give you a breakdown of what those anticipated costs would be.
Yeah, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was going to be my other question, Corey, for the space assessment study. Where is that?
It is. So, that's kind of the silver lining of COVID is that, it was put on hold. I think now that City Hall it's not going to cause quite as much disruption as it had if we were operating as we were pre-COVID. So the idea is to revisit the space study and see if we might be able to implement at least some of the changes. It's going to be easier to move finance and personnel when there are less people in the building, just as an example. So, but
did we have like a contractor do a space study for us? Or
so we did. We worked with, I think it was, I believe it was BIP that we worked with engineering to, it was also an opportunity for us to update our plans for City Hall because some of our plans, walls have been moved, doors have been changed, and we didn't really have updated plans. So we did do that. They did a interview with all the different departments to assess how many people they would need to try and determine how much space they would need. Obviously, the complication now is the introduction of and prevalence of more teleworking. And so do those numbers still reflect how many people are actually in the office? And the focus was mainly on City Hall because, the future of City Hall Commons is a bit of a question mark right now. But we did hire someone who did produce a study, and then we took those plans and kind of altered them. So as we revisit it, then I will be sharing with the council what the suggested changes would be for moving departments.
Yeah, sorry.
The clerk's office remains untouched, if that helps. Just a spoiler alert.
No, I wasn't concerned about that. I would like my parking back though. Councilor Green, I just want to point out that the City Hall is a National Register historic building. So this adjustment in space has to be looked at, and then, you know, certain walls cannot be moved, certain doors cannot be adjusted because we're on the National Historic Register of Historic Buildings. So that has to be taken into account.
Yep, we've been working with Kelly Haggerty to make sure that, you know, when we did the ramp, to make sure that we got all the necessary approvals. And the goal is to hopefully not have to move walls and not have, I mean, that was kind of the directive we gave to the firm that we worked with, is that we want to move as few walls as we need to. And I'm not even sure if the plans as they stand right now really require any of that. So absolutely, that's a definite sensitivity. We don't want to hugely change the nature of City Hall. What's that?
The interior is historic too, or just the exterior?
I would imagine, I would defer to the clerk on that, but I would imagine there are limits to what we're able to do inside.
Yes, there are limits in the interior. For example, if you walk down the central hall of City Hall, you'll see all those doors that don't go anywhere into the mayor's office. They all had to be maintained, is the historic nature of the building. So yes, the interior is affected just as well as the exterior.
Okay. All right. The next item is item 11.
So 11.
Is that the energy automation?
Yes,
Yep.
it is.
Okay, we're just going for an extension, and we're also extending out the time limit. It wasn't a January 1st to December 31st date. We're just making that so it's goes along with the fiscal year to 6/30.
Okay. Councilor Rudd, are you okay with this one?
Okay, if you're okay.
That's good. Okay. Item 12.
And 12, we are withdrawing that. That's the parking meter collection. So it's
Okay.
withdrawn at this time.
Item 13. Neil.
Item 13 is, I believe it's the TMC contract. I don't have it in front of me.
Yes, it is.
Yes.
So that went through committee and, or went out to RFP, proceeded through the committee, and JMT, which is a local engineering firm, has been selected by the committee to assist Public Works in operating, mainly staffing, the Transportation Management Center, formerly referred to as the Traffic Control Center. And
Neil, for people that weren't on the committee, do you want to just tell us briefly what TMC does?
Sure. The TMC is essentially the brain. It's the main area in which all of the interconnected signal systems come together, and that is housed at the Public Works building down on Canal Street. So this incorporates a number of what are essentially switchboards, which show us the status of our tricolor lights, our traffic signals around the city. There are also a few dozen traffic cameras that feed into this room as well. And this is a system that has been put into place and expanded several times over a few decades now with the assistance of state and federal dollars. And we want to make sure that we are meeting state and federal guidance as it relates to staffing, hours of operation, and making sure we're meeting those minimums. So this contract will allow us to do that, as well as take a look at signal timings and corridors in a more holistic fashion, as this firm has a number of traffic engineers on staff, as well as people who were involved in the Region 3, New York State DOT's Region 3 TMC. So we have some good knowledge base here to draw on.
Questions from Councilor Rudd or Driscoll?
Has the brain changed contractors a lot over recent years?
No, essentially it's been us. It's been Public Works operating it, and we've been doing it at a very low level, and not putting the system to its full use. And so when I mentioned earlier that we want to make sure we're in compliance with what the state and feds want, we need it to be staffed more robustly.
Neil, are you excited about it? Is it going to be a great thing?
Am I excited? Yeah. I mean, I think we can get a lot more use out of some serious technology that we have.
All right, sounds good.
All right. I'm comfortable moving this one then. Item 14, Neil. Traffic engineering services.
Item 14, the city generally retains at least 2 engineering firms. This is what we use for reviewing problematic intersections or to help us review traffic impact studies that may be submitted from a developer and we need a second opinion. And we are expanding this to 3 firms this year, same dollar amount, do not exceed amount. We're just going to split the contract up into 3 to make sure that we are getting the most expedient and appropriate services from our contractors. So if we put something out there that we need reviewed or studied or designed, we want to make sure it's coming back quickly. And having 3 firms on deck will allow us to do that. But this is a standard agreement that we've had in place for a very long time, and it gets put to good use.
Questions? All right, Councilor Rudd, you for this one.
Fine.
Neil?
Thanks.
Item 15, engineering.
Good afternoon, councilors. Item 15 is another one-on-one sanitary sewer offset requirement as required by the county. This project is Salina First, located at 1081 South Salina Street. And to meet their one-on-one sanitary sewer offset, they're going to be lining 3 sewer manholes and replacing frames and covers. And they're going to do that on the 200 and 300 block of Bird Street.
I know you say that a lot, Mary, the one-on-one match, whatever it is. Can you just explain that part of it to me? So, because I don't feel like I could explain it to somebody. How do we get, the county's paying for this because there's what's the 1-for-1? I don't understand.
Yep. So when a developer wants to redevelop a building or build something new, take the example of changing a warehouse into a mixed-use facility, like with commercial on the bottom and apartments on the top, the additional sanitary flow from that development, they need to offset it. So, for example, if they're going to be adding 100 gallons per day of sanitary flow, they need to offset it by doing a project, which typically I've mostly been coming to you with lining certain sections of sewers if it's a big project. And if it's not such a big project, then we usually have them line manholes, and that basically seals the pipes and the manholes from inflow and infiltration of water getting in, because our system is old and cracked and leaky.
So the developer basically just gives us some money and then we use it to invest in our system. Is that?
Nope. The developer has to do the work themselves, and then we accept the work.
So it's usually a project near their project. Is that?
Yes. Yep. Has to be in the same sewer area.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions on this one? Are you good with it, Councilor Rudd? Okay. All right. Thank you, Mary. Item 16, Councilor Awald.
Hello. So item 16, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So item 16 is to award our Brighton pump station design project to CHA. The committee met and decided, based on qualifications and price, that CHA was the best match. Any questions on that?
Counselor Green, you were on that committee as well?
Yeah.
It's all good with you, obviously. All right, I'm good with it.
All right.
I have one. I asked this question, and this has nothing to do with your item, but Commissioner Awald, to get a water hydrant key, I get that comes from the water department, or that comes from the fire department?
Comes from the water department.
Okay, I'll have to
That's like
shoot.
if you need to hook up to a fire hydrant, you got to come in for a permit, fill out the application. There's a fee, there's a deposit for the wrench and the fittings, because it's not a standard national pipe thread fittings on the hydrant. It's Syracuse pipe thread. So you need a special fitting that we can provide to utilize that hydrant for, like garden groups use for watering.
Right, that's what I'm interested in for a neighbor. So where exactly do I point them to? Where is it that they'd have to go to get the form?
They have to, the form is, we don't have it online yet. It's still at the office, but they can call Kim Kelchner in our office to set up an appointment to get the form, and depending on how long they need it for, if it's a day versus a week versus a month or a season, there's different stipulations involved.
Okay, if you could just shoot me her contact information, that would help. Thanks.
Will do.
All right. Thank you all.
Any other questions?
We're all set. Thank you all.
Thank you.